On May 25th, 1977, Star Wars A New Hope was released worldwide. It launched a lifelong obsession with this franchise that means so much to every one of us. Our love for this franchise is what has connected us together. We're now all forever friends.
Yes, I would say for sure we are all forever friends. Wouldn't you guys say? We're stuck together. So I want to kind of open it up a little bit. I mean, I'm 48. I was 3 years old when the first movie came out, so I didn't get to see it in theaters. The first Star Wars film that I saw in theaters was Return of the Jedi in '83, but I distinctly remember watching A New Hope with my dad, who he was the absolute fan that kind of introduced me to Star Wars, and we watched it on Betamax. So yeah, I'm kind of that old.
Whatever that means.
I don't even know what that
is. What is that?
I have no idea what that is.
My earliest memory is I watched Phantom Menace when I was like, I was like 4 years old, 5 years old, and the family was like making, like baked beans or something, and I'm like, what's that? And they're like, oh, your cousins are all watching Star Wars in the other room, you should go watch it. I'm like, what's that? I didn't even know what it was at the time, really. I go over there and I watched it, and I was watching the pod race. The pod race was the very first scene I ever saw, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And I'm like, I remember seeing everyone crashing. I'm like, oh, did he die? Did that person die too? Holy crap, what's happening? Right? It was visceral. It still holds up today. And as far as like all the other films go, Revenge of the Sith I was the only one I saw like in the theaters, like from the original 6, right? Because I was old enough to go and everything, and I was just bawling my eyes out, like brutally. I could not handle it, and it's stuck with me ever since. Revenge of the Sith has been like my favorite of all time. I don't have any memories of any of the others first time watching, but as far as I go, I've been a prequel kid since as long as I can remember.
Yeah. I ran into Return of the Jedi first because my brother had a copy of Return of the Jedi. So that's always going to be like the antithesis of Star Wars for me, is going to be Return of the Jedi. But after that, I actually watched the original trilogy in reverse order. So I watched Return, then Empire, then Star Wars. And then I went to the theaters to see the first three in the correct order. And yeah, I'm always going to be a prequel baby, but I mean, something in my brain is always going to peg the original Star Wars trilogy as Star Wars. It's incredible. So when it comes to like the May the 4th and May 25th, they're both wins for me because we get an extra Star Wars day. 2 times in a month, we get 2 Star Wars days. I'm fine with that.
Absolutely. What about you, Tyler?
Oh, well, my dad, being in his 20s, no, I'm kidding. He's a lot older than that, but
he's probably my age, right?
No, he's in his 50s, and he saw episode 4 in a drive-in theater. That's how old he was. And ever since then, it was basically a religion. So I couldn't watch the first 3 until I had watched 4, 5, and 6. I remember watching it on one of the big box TVs that had the rest of the TV in the back, unlike today.
Yes, the boob tubes, they were called.
And, being a kid, I was just zoned in on the explosions and the blasters and the lightsabers. And I liked the action. Like, when I first saw episode 2, I would fast forward through the rest of the movie just to get to the battle again. But as I got older, eventually, for the Republic.
Yeah.
So obviously, for obvious reasons, I fell in love with the clones, if that wasn't evident enough. But yeah, been a Star Wars fan ever since. Always will be.
Yeah.
No, I was the complete opposite. I grew up in a family that didn't like sci-fi, never watched Star Wars, so I had to discover it myself. I went to the cinema with a friend. I think it was episode 1. Must have been 10 years old, and I was obsessed. But I had no one to talk to about it because my family hated it. Not didn't hate it; they didn't even know what it was. They didn't watch any sci-fi at all. So, friends as well, they wasn't that interested in Star Wars either. So I was kind of alone in that. So I got obsessed with Star Wars by myself. And I think I actually skipped episode 2. And then when 3 came about, and you're hearing all about, you see the trailers of Darth Vader, and you're seeing more familiar stuff, then people from my world started to get involved a little bit more. And I think that's when my love actually started. It was Revenge of the Sith. As soon as that hit the cinema, like, then I had someone to talk to about it and was obsessed ever since then. It was Revenge of the Sith that got me fully into Star Wars. But yeah, I didn't discover the originals till much later. I remember being quite free. I think I was like 12, 13, but I remember like, I think I watched Empire Strikes Back before A New Hope, and I remember being a bit freaked out with the Dagobah stuff and all that. I remember being a bit freaked out. Like, I was quite,
right?
it was a bit scary, but I was just like, it just didn't hit, like, it just didn't land with me. I was much older when that stuff landed. I liked Return of the Jedi. I think I really gravitated towards Return of the Jedi, but Empire Strikes Back, I had to appreciate that much later on in life. And yeah, it was very backwards. It's all over the place. It was like episode 1, then 3, then 5, and then 4. It was just very like jumbled up. But,
what's his accent? Yeah. What's your accent there, mate?
I mean, that's
Australian.
pretty Australian now.
He's
Alex
from
thinks I'm
Coruscant.
Australian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess, you know, if you didn't have anybody to talk to for so long, like, do you remember, like, what was, like, the first circle that you had where you were, like, could openly geek out with someone else about Star Wars?
Yeah, it was probably like university. It was
Wow,
much later on. Yeah. I mean, I liked it when I was 10 years old. I had so much, like all the toys, I had all the lightsabers, like Darth Maul's lightsaber when I was like 10 years old. But yeah, I didn't start like discussing it and properly getting into it until, much, much later. I must have been like 17, 18.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then,
I mean,
what was
weird,
it?
right?
And Zach, how about you? When was like your introduction into Star Wars, and how did you fall in love with it?
Yeah. I remember being roughly 4, and my aunt would babysit me for my mom, and she didn't know what to do with a 4-year-old boy, so she tucked me away in like my uncle's office, put Return of the Jedi on VHS, and I just sat there, and my 4-year-old brain had never seen anything like Star Wars before,
Right.
and my 26-year-old brain still has never seen anything like Star Wars before. It's always just felt different, and I was just so like enamored with all the different aliens in Jabba's palace, and the stormtroopers, and of course Darth Vader. It was incredible. And then the prequels were coming out around that time, so I started watching those, and I just have an appreciation for the prequels and the originals because of that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think like, and that's the thing. I mean, you'll find a Star Wars fan no matter where you go, right? Like, I have been in a McDonald's, right, ordering some food, and somebody's wearing like a Star Wars t-shirt. I mean, you run into them all the time, and you're like, oh, cool shirt, bro, and they're like, yeah, man, I love Star Wars. When you get to talking about it, it's so great. I think it's like that one connective tissue that the world has, right? No matter where you are, it could be in Great Britain, it could be, in Australia, it could be in, Japan, right? Like, it's so common amongst all the fans. It's like such an unifying thing. So thank you, George Lucas, for bringing that to us and giving us that and doing the gift of that, because that's pretty special.
Thank the maker.
Thank the maker. Right? Thank the maker.
Technically my father.
Yeah, for sure. And then oh my gosh, you know what I did not do? I did not bring up my notebook that has all of the topics. But
Well, I will say on that note, to fill
Go ahead.
space,
Yes,
I didn't
thank you.
even. I turned Star Wars I turned most sci-fi and fandoms off for like all of high school because I was like
Same.
too concerned with like fitting in, sports, girls, everything. I wasn't even focused on that at all. And then once I started my channel, that's when I started getting into, unfortunately, that's when I started watching Clone Wars, which was in college. Like, I was so late to the game for all animation, and the channel is really what kind of threw me back into the world, and then I haven't left since. So. Like 100%, really at the end of the day, it's Star Wars that got me into the film industry. So I owe everything I have to George Lucas.
And you and Zach went to film school, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, and we met. Me
Yeah.
and Zach met in film school.
school.
Yeah. So
yeah. So you had
and
that
we were
one
both big
buddy
Star
that
Wars fans.
got you. He got you. You know
dude,
what I mean?
he was just quoting in class. He's just quoting Anakin lines, Obi-Wan lines, and every single moment where it fit, right?
Yeah.
Like just quoting it and adding it to it, and I was just like, dude, I love this guy. Like he remembers like pretty much every line from everything, right? And I'm just like, I don't even know that much, man. And then I was thinking, I'm like, I'm terrible at video essays. I'm terrible at talking about Star Wars, right? Because I don't know like all the ins and outs of everything. You, Maria, you know everything. Zach pretty much knows everything too. So I'm like, Zach, why don't you come on and let's do a channel? You can do like video essays. We can do a podcast. And I just, because I saw like he had it all, and I was like, why not try to build another channel with him? And that's what we've been doing. So.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
There it is.
They're
And I
just
think-
so quotable. Everything
Yes.
is quotable in the prequels.
Everything. And I think the two of you also made friends with Catherine, who's also on your podcast now. So
Yeah,
you
we
guys
made.
met-
She was doing reaction videos after her fan film, right? After the
Yeah.
Star Wars Theory fan film, she did reactions to some of my content, and we connected, and now we do the podcast together too. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's
They used
just
to
it's
invite
so
me
much
on
fun.
there a long time ago, actually. But
I've never been invited. Don't worry.
I mean,
Neither have I.
the problem is four is a crowd, right?
oh yeah,
people.
that's how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I think I made it on there like once or twice.
Did you? Oh, very cool, though. I
Yeah,
mean,
we need
you
to start
get
having
more
guests
than
on
I. Yeah, I don't think he
Definitely need to.
Yeah, I don't think he does that. I don't know. But Theory just doesn't. I don't think he brings up guests anymore. I think